Hey everyone, I'm joined with my friend Gabriel. We're here to talk about Mulholland Drive. As soon as I saw it, I figured I need to make just some sort of discussion video about this, just to get some thoughts out with a friend. And I'm joining Gabriel because he is a big David Lynch fan as well, and, Mulholland Drive, I think, does it happen to be one of your favorite films?
Number 5 or something on the
Yeah?
top 10.
It only makes sense that we should talk about this.
Absolutely.
Where do you want to start?
I guess starting off right at the beginning of Mulholland Drive, we have the opening shot, which is people dancing. And it's like the same one or two couples dancing overlaid multiple times over. And I guess I just wanted to see if you had any thoughts on this first shot, because I think it's I really have.
I think it involves the jitterbug that she was involved in, that she won, and she's all shut up in lights, like she's all bright, like the spotlight is on her.
She's stepping into the spotlight.
Yeah, and that's overlaid with the dancing.
Yeah. That kind of eluded me.
It might have been that, but it could just be some people dancing in her brain.
Right.
Who knows?
Or maybe that's the kind of happiness and excitement, because those are some really happy people dancing.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of excitement that she thinks she'll find in Hollywood. What struck me, I mean, it struck me every single time I watched it, when her and those two, that old man and woman, they all step into the spotlight. Before they come into focus, it looks like an out of focus shot of Mount Rushmore. Did you see that?
I know. Yeah, it did look weird. I thought it was going to be Mount Rushmore for a second.
Right. But anyway, that leads us into the second shot there, which I had actually forgotten was in the film until this last time I watched it the other night. But the camera tracks over Diane's bed and hovers over her pillow before diving into the pillow, zooming into the pillow and fading to black.
Oh.
And I took that to mean that from here on out, basically until further notice, what we are witnessing is Diane's dream.
I did. You know what? I forgot that. I didn't know that there's a second shot with the bed. That makes so much more sense now, that the rest of the film is just a dream.
And I think that it's further evidence for what you said about the opening shot with the people dancing, because that wasn't a dream.
No.
That was reality. Right. And so after that, immediately we dive into the dream.
There's a lot to discuss about the dream sequence, that whole entire sequence where we thought was the film or reality.
And it's interesting, too. I'm not sure if we can simply chalk that section up to a dream sequence, because there are pieces of dream, sure, but then there are pieces of fantasy where she's imagining how her life could have been.
You know, the scenes that don't feature any of the female leads, like the diner scene with Dan and Herb, and the whole sequence with the director, they could be part of the dream too. Because you know how when you dream, you have people in it, like faces you don't recognize, but your brain itself doesn't actually produce original faces. They're all made up of people you've seen when you were awake in reality, but they could have just been random people that walked by. And the diner scene with Dan and Herb were made up of those two guys that we never seen, but she sees them in reality. She sees him in the background, standing at the counter, as a person she saw, but she saw that face, and that could have been made into a dream part as well. And like the scene where the director's, getting pitched his cast members, the people around him were all seen in the portion where she goes to that party up at his house.
Right, the house party.
You can see the executives in the background talking. You could even see the cowboy walking by, which could signify how she got the cowboy dream.
Right. And in her fantasy, those characters have to do certain things and basically arrive at a point of decision making to make her fantasy come true in this fantasy world. And so the parts that we see, like at Ryan Enterprises and when Adam Kesher meets with the cowboy, those are just fitting those pieces together. That's how the characters that are just passing faces arrive at the point where they can make those decisions. You wonder if is that just for the benefit of the audience? And that's interesting. We're talking about the Winkies scene when they go out back and see the evil presence behind the diner.
The bum.
Yeah.
Fun fact, the actress who plays the bum, Bonnie Aarons, is the same actress who plays the nun in the Conjuring series.
Oh, no way. I didn't know that.
I don't know. Maybe they saw it and was like, that's the girl. That's who we need as the nun.
This is the girl.
This is the girl. Yeah. It was such an odd scene to see because afterwards you're expecting to see the two again, like they'll somehow fit their way into the plot, but it means it's nothing. But that also goes into how a dream, there are sequences that just don't make sense.
Or don't piece together with others.
Yeah, have no logic, have no correlation, because a lot of people, when they dream, they have sequences. They don't have one long-running thing.
It's not super coherent when you put those pieces together. It's interesting because it definitely, that scene definitely plays a role. It kind of seems like that sequence is, it's a metaphor for external forces that we lay our blame on for our own problems and our own challenges that we face, because that was one of the things that contributed to Diane's downfall. She started blaming Hollywood for her failures and let that just bring her down. And so that this guy at the diner, he's talking about this dream he had and how there's this evil presence. It's not him. He's simply a bystander. And so he's blaming this horrible feeling on this evil presence that is out back. Eventually, he does go to confront this presence and ends up, can't be said for sure, but it seems like he dies. He has a heart attack right there. And that could be, well, that could be him going and facing his demons and still ending up dead, failing to overcome his inner demons. Because the other guy seems completely unfazed.
He doesn't, as if he's not even seeing the thing. It's just Dan.
Right. And Diane ends up trying to face her demons as well, but they ultimately overcome her instead of the other way around.
It seems everyone, when they discuss that scene, they talk about the jump scare and how that kind of solidified the use of that in film. I mean, that makes sense that people want to talk about the jump scare more so than try to discuss what the fuck the scene even meant.
It's kind of a cheap way to look at it.
Yeah, it's a cheap way. Just be like, man, he really scared us there. We don't know what it is, but it scared us. Speaking of the old people laughing, you notice that scene where they're alone in the back of a limo, and it looks so off, like you don't know why they're laughing. I think it's because they're laughing at her, being like, God, she really believes she's gonna make it in Hollywood. We already know what's gonna happen. They're just laughing at it in spite. What did you think of the man in the chair that was making calls in the dark?
Yes.
That was so weird.
That's a great question. I wonder, I mean, that is especially interesting because I've always thought of that guy as a symbol for Hollywood. He's like this fictitious mastermind for Hollywood that is the head of this fictitious mob that is in control of the situation. And we don't get character development here. He's just a mysterious guy sitting in the dark giving orders. And so I think that's just another fictitious object for Diane to lay her blame on.
Yeah.
I don't think he exists.
Because when you dream, you think of these like omnipresent like ghosts or shadows, these demons, you know, if you have a nightmare. And he is part of a nightmare she's having. But instead of him being embodied as a ghost or a demon, you know, typical thing that children would have, he is embodied in her work as this man who is preventing her from succeeding.
He ultimately is the one responsible. He's at the core.
Like the whole idea of this crime organization making deals with executives to place certain actresses in certain roles. It's all part of what she fears is happening with her career.
But it's also just, I don't know if it's necessarily wishful thinking, but I feel like it's easier for Diane to process a scheme where she basically is perfect for this part. The director loves her and she is first in line to get this role. But then we have the mob come in who's in control and they step in and basically force the director to cast this other girl. But it's not because he wants to. He'd rather have this other girl.
Yeah, that scene where she is in the fantasy where she is looking at the director and he's looking back at her as Camilla is singing and they just look at each other. That's where I started to doubt what was reality because I'm thinking this is kind of cheesy. Like, what are these two doing? Like, there's no relation at all. Directors, you know, he's probably seen 100,000 women come in and out of all these things and there's no way this guy's thinking of her as the perfect choice. It happens, but the way it was filmed made me start to doubt what was reality.
That's a pretty clear telling of a up-and-coming actress's fantasy, to be picked out of the crowd.
Yeah.
She says early on something like, once I'm discovered. She wants someone to discover her and carry her to the top because she thinks that that's how the industry works. And for some people, it totally is.
Yeah.
But is that the norm? No. Absolutely not.
And that scene previously where she was being auditioned with that older actor, it almost looked like everyone was forming like a wall. Like there were just so many people in that room that were unnecessarily there. I don't know, just be there as this like force for her. Yet when she was letting that guy grope her and just be very Harvey Weinstein-y with her, it made me think about like, damn, this is probably what a lot of actresses have to go through. Just some degrading shit in front of all these people just to get some small part. You know, that also goes hand in hand with how David filmed the lesbian scenes with them. It did feel a little odd.
It doesn't come on naturally at all. It's very forced.
That is sort of how dreams go too, if you're having a wet dream, you know, or attractive person, you know.
And it's over pretty quick.
It is.
That's very much like a dream. And that is her fantasy, to be with Camilla Rhodes.
Yeah, Camilla Rita, yeah. What was your opinion on the cowboy? What did you think he embodied?
I think that right there is the hardest question that can be posed about Mulholland Drive. I think that David Lynch could give a pretty good answer.
He won't, though. He refuses any explanation.
Even doing a little bit of research online, a lot of people had different interpretations.
What were some you read?
It was a connection to one's thought process. But I find it interesting that when Adam Kesher pulls up to the corral, he switches off the headlights in his car. And his world is plunged into darkness. He's going into a dark space within himself. And then when he walks into the corral, that light starts flashing and then turns on. And that's when the cowboy appears. The cowboy appears when a character needs to make a life-changing decision.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, it's like the little angel on the shoulder or something, because he's asking him really weird questions. Like the cowboy's asking Adam to repeat what he said back to him in a very condescending way. It's like that self-talk we have, that very super critical self-talk.
That makes sense. And he's, at first, Adam doesn't really, is kind of gloating at the ridiculousness of a situation where he's being talked to by a cowboy. Not a very threatening looking guy at first, but once he like talks and brings out that affirmation, like, no, I need you to understand what I am saying to you. This isn't just a conversation, this is a decision to make. I don't know, the setting of it, I didn't know if they were truly alone or if they were being watched underneath that light.
And underneath that skull.
Yeah, the light of death was on them and watching what their decision was going to be. They didn't say they would kill him or anything, but they said that they would ruin any chance of him making a film, which could mean anything. Even though Adam, as a character, he wasn't that nice of a guy, but it still made you worry for him in that scene.
He got just enough character development to invoke a bit of empathy from the audience, for sure.
You know, and then they bring up the detectives with Robert Forster in it, and it's a sad thing to know that he's a dream even though we don't see him in reality. It makes us wonder where she saw Robert Forster.
That was actually one of the sequences that I struggled with. What was the purpose of those two officers, investigators who arrived at the car crash once
Rita Camilla
done
yeah.
that?
The whole gang. Yeah, it was weird. Maybe, I mean, we do have dreams about actors. Maybe it's as simple as she saw Jackie Brown and was like, damn, this Robert Forster's just gonna show up as a cop in my dream. Maybe it's that.
The film needs to fill in those gaps for us to keep us on our toes.
I'm not surprised that neither of us have even touched the lady with the blue hair in the theater yet, because I have no thoughts on that. Like, I have no idea what that is.
Me neither, but it's really interesting. There's a very deep meaning there, and I want to watch it again. I'm not going to give up on finding my own interpretation for that, but that is one piece that does elude me.
Yeah, I guess she's important enough that she does show up on the Criterion cover when you purchase the Blu-ray.
Right, and she gets the final shot of the film. Is she the dream?
Is she death? Because she's the last thing we see.
Oh my goodness.
Bro.
Whoa.
Maybe she's what she would have been if she lived long enough to be that age of the woman with the blue hair.
Her appearance is like proof that whoever that is deeply steeped in Hollywood history, has been around for a while. They're totally immersed in this bizarre culture. But I think there's a correlation between the blue lockbox that is the bridge between fantasy and reality and the dream.
Oh yeah, that could be correlated because that blue box is kind of what turns off the dream.
It seems like the bridge. In the fantasy or the dream or whatever, the key is already on her person.
Maybe from the lady with the blue hair gave it to her, just because she's there, it's her place, maybe.
And I do wonder, is the blue key in reality and the different looking blue key in the dream, are they the same key? Are they different keys?
Maybe a lot of the reality that we see, everything we see prior to her killing herself, is also part of the dream, but like that's a memory more so than reality.
That's a good way to put it, because the pacing is weird. When we look back upon our memories and we relive them in our minds, there are some things that are somewhat dreamlike. The pacing is off. Certain things can be changed, like her sitting on the couch.
And then like how she's sitting on her couch and the old people crawl underneath her door and chase her. That's a dream, because she wakes up in her bed and then she kills herself. That's what makes me think that everything we see prior to her killing herself is also a dream, but played out as a memory rather than a fantasy. Because maybe she did meet up with Joe and do that and she's just recollecting it because he gives her the blue key. Maybe it is a memory, but I am almost 100% sure that the old people chasing her in her house is a dream, chases her into her bed. She literally gets up of bed and then kills herself with a gun. I think that is very...
You can be snapped out of nightmares really quick, and that's what happened to her.
She almost acted as if she came to a different sense of...
a state of awareness. She becomes fully aware, everything hits her with full force, and she kills herself. I think that those two old people, they're the embodiment of her inner demons. They're straight up encouraging at the beginning. They're only aiding her in her quest. But then we see them again, and each time we can already tell there's something off when they're in the limo. But then when we see them and they're walking around and terrifying her.
They come out of the bum's bag, little tiny action figures.
Yeah, I feel like there's a whole other conversation on that bag. Well, I think just like the bum is the embodiment of our inner demons, the old man and woman, they crawl out of the bag that we can assume was in the possession of the bum. So I think that the bum and the man and the woman are part of the same idea.
Okay, well, I think that's enough discussion for now. Thank you for joining me, Gabriel.
Absolutely. And I think that we touched on some really interesting points with Mulholland Drive today. And as far as films to discuss, this is just one of my favorites. So.
And thank you, everyone, for watching. If you like this content, I'll bring more regardless. How Lynch would say, have a great day. And bye-bye.